Shapiro.
We must also be honest about what people say and do, regardless of what that means coalitionally. It is the job of politicians to build coalitions. It's the job of those of us who try to shape public opinion to hold politicians to account and to hold them accountable to our values. We must not let fear of audience deter us from telling the truth. We must not let fear of other hosts deter us from telling the truth. So, for example, if Candace Owens decides to spend every day since the murder of Charlie Kirk casting aspersions at TPUSA and the people who work here, who worked with Charlie every single day, his best friends, to cast aspersions at Mikey McCoy and Andrew Colvin and Blake Neff and Tyler Boyer, and yes, at Erica Kirk, and to imply or outright claim complicity in a cover-up over Charlie's murder, to spew absolutely baseless trash implicating everyone from French intelligence to Mossad to members of TPUSA in Charlie's murder or a cover-up in that murder, then we, as people with a microphone, have a moral obligation to call that out by name. Erica Kirk and TPUSA never should have been put in the position to have to defend themselves against such specious and evil attacks, particularly in a time of mourning. And the people who refuse to condemn Candace's truly vicious attacks, and some of them are speaking here, are guilty of cowardice. Yes, cowardice. The fact that they have said nothing while Candace has been vomiting all sorts of hideous and conspiratorial nonsense into the public square for years is just as cowardly. Second, because we owe you the truth, we owe you the duty to speak out of principle, not personal feeling. It should not matter whether we despise someone or whether we love someone. The question is what they say and what they do, and whether those things are morally decent or not. On a political level, do they foster freedom, justice, and prosperity? On a personal level, do they treat others as they would wish to be treated? Personal feeling is not a substitute for moral judgment. To take again the Candace Owens situation as an example, friendship with public figures who say or do evil things is not an excuse for silence on the matter. Politics is not the sisterhood of the traveling pants. I should break the omerta here and just be a little bit clear. The notion that people in our industry are close friends, like we all take holiday breaks with each other and go to each other's kids' graduations and stuff, is generally untrue. Some people do that, most of us don't. We see each other at conferences and we talk on the phone and all the rest. We're business colleagues. But even if it were true that other public figures were our best friends, our very best friends, that does not relieve us of our duty to speak out of principle and not to cover up evil or shy away from addressing it out of friendship. So no, Tucker Carlson, it is not an excuse to go silent on Candace's targeting of TPUSA. The same holds true of Megyn Kelly, a person I consider a friend, characterizing Candace as a young mother and thus shying away from condemning her actions or fibbing about them. Ilhan Omar is a young mother. That doesn't matter. And when Megyn said this week, quote, "My goal and my job here is to try to understand, yes, where Candace is coming from on this," and says she sees no purpose in inserting herself, quote, into this on one side, that is a moral and logical absurdity. There is only one moral side here, Erica Kirk's side. Third, and relatedly, we have a duty to take responsibility for what we say and do. If we hire awful people, we're responsible for that. I have some experience there, as you might suspect. That means that if we offer a guest for your viewing, we owe it to you to ask the kinds of questions that actually get at the truth. If we agree with the guest, that's fine, but we should own it. So, for example, if you host a Hitler apologist, Nazi-loving, anti-American piece of refuse like Nick Fuentes, You know, the Nick Fuentes who said that the Vice President of the United States is a, quote, fat gay race traitor married to a Jeet. The person who said that Charlie Kirk was a, quote, retarded idiot. The person who said, and pardon my language here, it's his quote, that he, quote, took Turning Point USA and fucked it, and that's why it's filled with groypers. If you have that person on your show and you proceed to glaze him, you ought to own it. There is a reason that Charlie Kirk despised Nick Fuentes, and indeed even chided Dinesh D'Souza for debating him. He knew that Nick Fuentes is an evil troll, and that building him up is an act of moral imbecility. And that is precisely what Tucker Carlson did. He built Nick Fuentes up. And he ought to take responsibility for that, just as he ought to take responsibility for glazing pornographer and alleged sex trafficker Andrew Tate, or for mainstreaming fake historian and pseudo-Nazi apologist Daryl Cooper as America's best and most honest popular historian. Hosts are indeed responsible for the guests they choose and the questions they ask those guests. Fourth, because we have a duty to truth, we also have a duty to provide you with evidence of the claims that we make. Emotive accusations, conspiracy theories, and just guessing questions, that's lazy and stupid and misleading. None of them are a substitute for truth. None of them are a substitute for evidence. So, when Candace Owens says, I don't know, but I know, that is retarded, and we are all more retarded for having heard it. When Steve Bannon, for example, accuses his foreign policy opponents of loyalty to a foreign country, he's not actually making an argument based in evidence. He's simply maligning people that he disagrees with, which is indeed par for the course from a man who was once a PR flack for Jeffrey Epstein. Check the record.
Thank you for being here, Ben. You cited during your speech truth as the most important tenet of American conservatism. Why, therefore, did you call irrelevant the Israeli attack in 1967 on the USS Liberty, which left dozens of American servicemen dead and hundreds wounded?
So what I actually said is that if we're looking at modern Israeli-American relations, looking at an attack that happened mistakenly by multiple Navy reports, multiple Israeli reports, and all available evidence, and using that attack in order to undermine today's relations between Israel and America, that's irrelevant. As irrelevant as it would be to cite a piece of evidence from World War II or from 1776 to define America's relations with, for example, Great Britain or Germany today. That does not mean that the attack wasn't horrible for the Americans involved, that it wasn't bloody and terrible. The Israeli government paid reparations to the people who were killed. If you look at the actual military record of what happened on the USS Liberty, it was clearly a mistaken and tragic attack. The people who frequently cite the USS Liberty, however, are not talking about the specifics of the USS Liberty. I suspect that the vast majority of people who bring this up are doing so in order to suggest that Israel deliberately attacked an American ship because Israel deliberately wants to harm America. It is connected generally with a larger point. I wonder if that's your point.
If the truth matters, then the Israeli government must be held accountable for that attack. The American flag was flying on that ship. You do not mistake an American ship for a foreign one when our flag is flying.
So, we can spend the rest of the time talking about the specifics of the U.S. Liberty attack, or you can actually go look at the naval investigations that were done, multiple naval investigations that were done. The reality is that people were flying Mirage planes for the Israeli military at the time. The USS Liberty was sailing in an area where it had essentially gone off-grid. The Israeli military mistook it for an Egyptian ship. They thought it was shelling Al Arish, which happened not to be true. In the initial attack, the American flag was knocked down, and then the attack went on for about 90 minutes. And then, as soon, you can hear this, by the way, on the tapes of the Israeli pilots talking to each other, as soon as they realize that it's an American ship, they call off the attack, they speed a ship to try and help the USS Liberty. There have been multiple unfortunate friendly fire incidents between Allied forces, including, for example, in the Gulf War, where U.S. forces were responsible for killing about 9 British troops during the Gulf War. It's an unfortunate reality of war, but you're not answering my question, which is, what is your broader agenda in asking the question? Because I suspect that your question is not limited to your specific ire over an incident that happened in 1967.
I think we should question any foreign country's relationship with our government.
That's totally fine, but I'm just wondering why you
serve American interests.
Again, I'm perfectly fine with questioning any country's relationship with the United States. But, again, I'm wondering what your motivation is in bringing up a 6-decade-old attack as though it is the #1 issue in assessing the relationship between Israel and the United States today.
Well, many problems persist to this day, but it's interesting that you say 6-decade-old incident when there are many people in this audience who were alive for that attack, as if this is something that's irrelevant.
Well,
that doesn't
no, it's just not particularly relevant to assessing the relationship between the United States and Israel today, in the same way that in 1967, there are a wide variety of countries with which the United States had different relations. Okay, it's clear you're not going to actually answer the question, so I'm happy to move to this one. So, again, if Charlie can do that, a raw kid out of high school, no college degree, and build the most powerful conservative organization in America, then you can do it too, because that's what America's all about. You're an American, go do it. Thank you so much.
I never miss a Charlie Kirk event because I love Charlie Kirk.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tucker Carlson.
Thank you. Walking out is always such a trip at these things. I just got here, and I feel like I missed the first part of the program. Hope I didn't miss anything meaningful. But I just want to say, I don't think I did. No, I'm just kidding. I watched it. I laughed. That kind of bitter, sardonic laugh that emerges from you when, like, Upside Down World arrives. When your dog starts doing your taxes and you're like, wait, it's not supposed to work this way. To hear calls for, like, deplatforming and denouncing people at a Charlie Kirk event, I'm like, what? This is hilarious. Yeah, this is hilarious. Actually, one of the clips I was listening to myself, thinking as I often do when I hear myself speak, which is never, because I never watch myself, but at these events they always play, like, the role of you. And I'm like, that guy is pompous. Woo! Sorry about that. We don't see ourselves clearly. But the prediction that, you know, at some point when Republicans took power again, which I did everything I could, you know, to help, and really felt that was important. I still think, you know, I was right. But I really thought that the impulse to deplatform people, or even to use the word platform as a verb, which it's not, it's a noun, don't steal my nouns, deplatform and denounce. Why haven't you denounced somebody else? The whole, like, Red Guard Cultural Revolution thing that we so hated and feared on the left that we did everything we could to usher in a new time where you could have an actual debate. I mean, this kind of was the whole point of Charlie Kirk's public life. And I think that he died for it. I really believe that. And I know a lot about it because the last several months of Charlie's life were devoted in part to arguing about this event, in fact, this speech, in fact, my speech here, which he asked me to do earlier this year, this summer, and was immediately put under just immense pressure from people who give money to Turning Point, I would assume good people, but who wanted him to take me off the roster. And this has all become public, and the whole thing is so sad that I never talk about it, except to say Charlie stood firm in his often stated and deeply held belief that people should be able to debate, and that if you have something valid to say, if you're telling the truth, you ought to be able to explain it calmly and in detail to people who don't agree with you, and that you shouldn't immediately resort to shut up racist. You shouldn't immediately go to motive. By the way, shut up racist is the #1 reason I voted for Donald Trump. And because I'm just sick of it. I mean, first of all, if I was a racist, if I was a bigot, I would just say so. Okay, it's America. You're allowed to be whatever kind of person you want. I'm not. I'm sincerely opposed, have always been, and will always be. But the style of debate where you prevent the other side from talking or being heard because you immediately go to motive, well, I wonder why you're asking that question. I wonder why. Why are you asking that question? I detect in the question a certain evil in your soul. And everyone listening should know that listening to you implicates them, and that they someday may be asked to denounce you, and that friendship is not a reason to defend someone. Love is no defense. I kind of thought we'd reached the end of that, and as far as I'm concerned, we have, and I'm not going to play by those rules. I'm not going to engage in that. If someone doesn't like what I think, fine with me, as long as I get to express it. That's my view. But since we're on the topic, I think I should take the opportunity to explain why Charlie was under all this pressure, and I think Erica, who I just saw backstage, and whom I love, and who I can tell you is totally committed to continuing the core principle of Charlie's public life, which is the right of every person to express what he believes. That is rooted in Christian faith. We believe people should be able to say what they think because they have souls. They're human beings created by God. They are not slaves. They are not animals. They are not objects. You cannot tell another human being to shut up, even shut up racist, because you don't own him. He is an independent, autonomous person created by God as an individual. Okay, so that's where that belief comes from. That's where free speech comes from. And there's no accident. This is the only country in the world that protects it, because our founding documents were informed, as you just heard so nicely expressed by Michael Knowles, my friend, by people who self-consciously incorporated Christian precepts into their structure of government. So Charlie was committed to that. But the people around him were like, you can't, because it's not that Carlson's wrong. My only point was I don't want a land war with Iran. I got over my skis and said I didn't want another regime change war with Iran. Rather than explain why we should have a regime change war with Iran, which I'd be happy to listen to, he's an anti-Semite. He's an anti-Semite. To which I said, well, obviously that's not true. And Charlie said, I know. And then it just didn't stop. So I continued to say, I'm not an anti-Semite. We don't care what you say. You're lying. You are. So let me just affirm one final time, not only am I not an anti-Semite, and would say so if I was, I'm not an anti-Semite for a very specific reason. Not because it's unpopular or my donors don't like it. I don't have any donors. I'm not an anti-Semite because anti-Semitism is immoral. In my religion, it is immoral to hate people for how they were born. Period. But that is not a limited principle. That is a universal principle. It applies to every human being on planet Earth. You may not, you are prohibited by my religion, which is Christianity, from hating people for how they were born. Because God created them with his spark in his image. Because they have souls. You can disagree with them. You can hate their ideas. You may even find yourself, and I do, I'll confess it, hating them for a moment. But you can't hate everyone who's like them. You can't punish people for crimes they didn't commit. That's the basis of our justice system. That's the basis of Christian ethics. That's why we have what are called human rights. They apply to every human, not just your group, not just my group, but every group, every human, because we don't consider people in terms of the groups to which they belong. We consider them as individuals the way that God created them. So anti-Semitism is not just naughty, it's immoral. And it is precisely as immoral as hating any other group. And that would include other groups in the United States that are hated and have been under attack for decades. And that would include white men who did nothing to become white men. They were born that way. And just because you have a beef with a white man, let's just say Donald Trump, doesn't mean you get to punish all the rest of the white men in the country. And yet, our leaders, not just of our Congress, the executive branch under Biden, but of every major U.S. corporation, of every college in the country, probably except Hillsdale and 2 others, every single one for more than 10 years has engaged in a systematic effort to hurt white men because they are white men. That is racism that is precisely as bad as anti-Semitism, but it is much more widespread and has been so far much more damaging. And my point is, if you said nothing about that, or if you encouraged it by, say, cheering on BLM, which was an anti-white hate group, and said so, then you have no moral standing to lecture me about bias. Period. Because all bias is the same. You are not allowed to hate people based on their bloodline. We do not believe in blood guilt. We reject blood guilt. That's why our justice system is just. That's why our religion is just. Every person has the possibility of transformation. Paul is wandering around, Saul of Tarsus is wandering around murdering Christians. Then he decides, well, I'll walk to Syria, and he's met on the road by Jesus, who changes him, and in one day he becomes the most energetic church planter and apostle of Christianity. In one day. He went from enemy to leader in one day. And that possibility exists for every human being, every human being. That's what our Christian faith tells us. That's also what our eyes tell us. There are no permanent enemies. There cannot be. And I would extend this to even people who attack me from this stage. They'll say, if we agree on something, I'm happy to be friends with you. You may have been mean to me one day. Well, I was mean to you too. That's all right. There is always the possibility that we can recognize we have more in common than divides us and come back together. There are no permanent enemies. There is no such thing as blood guilt, and collective punishment in this country, in the Middle East, anywhere on the planet is totally immoral. And if you want to know what makes America exceptional, it's that idea. And it's our job to defend it. So I guess I would just say to the many organizations now, and particularly this applies to the Anti-Defamation League, which has cheered on anti-white hatred for decades, has attacked anyone who said anything about it, which has been one of the most aggressive cheerleaders for hate against white men in the United States, now trying to lecture the rest of us about hate, I would say it's enough to point out the irony of that. Come to our side, which is the side of humanity, and oppose all hate against all people. Say out loud, hate against whites is every bit as bad as hate against Jews. It's a universal principle, or it's not a principle. It's just a preference. If it's not a universal principle, it's not a principle, it's just a preference. It's just identity politics. And we've had enough of that. And that's the one thing that will destroy this country, certainly. The only thing that will save it is the understanding that principles upon which America was founded apply to every single human being always. So I just want to say that. By way of saying that I'm not just situationally opposed to anti-Semitism, I'm actually opposed to anti-Semitism. And I hope that the ADL will join me. I'll send them money, by the way, if they come out against hate aimed at anyone and everyone. I hope they will. Anyway, now that I made everyone mad, are there any questions that I can answer?
Is the American-Israel Public Affairs Committee, commonly known as AIPAC, is them being in America and not registered with FARA like all other lobbying groups in America, is that America first? Is it America first for senators, Congress, and even our president to take money from AIPAC?
Is it America first to take money from a foreign lobby so you'll send taxpayer dollars to that country? You know, even the question kind of answers itself. Obviously it isn't. And that's not an attack on Israel. It's certainly not anti-Semitism, despite the efforts of many to claim that it is. It's just an obvious statement. And the fact that people are attacked for asking the question, this is something that I talked to Charlie a lot about in his final months, because he was being attacked as an anti-Semite for asking that question. And we've memory hold that, but I was there, so I saw it. That's not the right way. Don't attack people's motives. And I have a lot to attack people's motives. I'm trying to remind myself, don't do that. Respond to what they're saying. Right? And so, no, of course it's not. And it's totally fine to ask about why a foreign government tried to sink one of our ships in 1967. That doesn't make you an anti-Semite, sorry. Those are Americans who died. And by the way, yeah, whatever. Anyway, but the point is, no, of course not. And that's why they won't have the conversation. And my point is, you know, I'm 56, my kids are grown. I'm just not afraid of you at all. I don't hate you or anyone else. I love this country. I'm going to be here till I die. I have an absolute God-given right to ask these questions. And I'm going to keep doing that, period. And you can shoot me or put me in jail, but the questions won't go away. So, no, of course it's not. And that's why they respond with, like, rage and shame, because you caught them doing something they can't defend. Duh.
It's important.
Tucker. My name's Harrison Tinsley. I'm a single dad in California. Didn't get to meet him till he was 15 months old just because I'm conservative. 1/2 custody. His mom tried to trans him. Long story short, I have full custody now. And it's a dream come true. Thank you. But it's a miracle, and praise God, because I know so many dads that all have zero custody because of this. So Marjorie Taylor Greene's bill, Protect Children Innocence Act, just passed the House. Can we pass it in the Senate and finally end this gender insanity, mutilating, hurting kids? And will you interview me?
The last part, pull your face back from the microphone so I can hear you.
And will you interview me?
Am I going to interview detransitioned people? Is that the question?
No, me as a dad. And can we finally stop the mutilation of children with Marjorie Taylor Greene's bill?
You asked, and I'll just answer this and stop. You asked about Marjorie Taylor Greene's bill to ban the mutilation of children, which for some reason seems to have a lot of trouble getting through the House of Representatives, which is controlled by Republicans. And if there's ever a clearer example of whose side they're on, I can't think of it. Because at least on some of the foreign policy stuff, they can tell you, no, we have to be at war with Russia because Putin's bad. He's just bad. He's bad. Okay, got it. We have to kill all the kids in Gaza because otherwise the Gazans will come here and kill us. Okay. What's the potential excuse for allowing the sexual mutilation of children? At that point, I'm like, I don't want to question people's motives, but I'm starting to wonder. And I do think it just gets back to you have to demand more from your members of Congress, from your leaders more broadly. You're not allowed to sell us out again, because if you keep doing that, people get radical and hateful. And then they get desperate because they realize their vote doesn't matter. And that's when things start to go sideways in a way that nobody wants. So yeah, if you can't even ban the castration of children, I hope there is a list, and I've been traveling today, but I hope on the internet there's a list of everyone who voted against that effort, and I hope that they are punished for it. I mean, they will be ultimately, but I hope they're punished in this life. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for attending AMFEST 2025 Night 1. That is a wrap for the session.
To fight, they're coming for Trump, but they're coming for you too, because you have Trump's back. Action, action, action. They are afraid of Christians that are populist nationalists. The deep state must be destroyed to free the American people. Is there any question about that?
Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Bannon.
We are at war. Start with that because Charlie Kirk knew one thing. He knew we were at war, and he knew we were going to be victorious if we didn't quit. Charlie Kirk understood one thing. We are at war. It's a political war. It's a cold civil war. We don't want it to turn hot. We don't need it to turn hot if we accomplish what we're supposed to accomplish. And we have won 7 of 8 national elections. The American people are with us as long as we get things done. The Republican establishment think that President Trump's just a passing storm and that he's just going to fade away. And what they're going to try to do is co-opt Turning Point, because Charlie has built it into a massive political operation. But Charlie Kirk was a man of action, and I want to make sure that we get something straight tonight. We have a partners discussion. And I want to say up front, if I hurt some feelings here, you can come and talk to me afterwards. This whole thing that's gone on the last couple of days, some of the comments tonight, this is not about, this specific incident is not about freedom of speech or platforming or deplatforming. They're all talking about that, and that's, people are saying hurtful things to each other. Tucker said the quiet part out loud. This is a proxy on 28. Now, I think it's way too early to be thinking about 28. But he's right about one thing. This is a proxy on an issue that's not freedom of speech and not are you going to get platformed or deplatformed. This is about a situation that Charlie Kirk was probably one of the most, if not the most important person in doing and accomplishing. And that is this concept of what I would call greater Israel and Israel first. You can't get a better defender of Israel than Charlie Kirk. You can't get a better defender of Israel than Steve Bannon. At Breitbart, adamant, couldn't have a two-state solution. In the White House, I'm the one that pushed initially hard to move the embassy to Jerusalem. At War Room, ask all the War Room people that are here. Ask all the posse. We always talk about it, and we're one state, not a two-state. But that's about Israel. It's not about greater Israel, and it's not about Israel first. Charlie Kirk had some foundational beliefs. Those foundational beliefs are, number one, he's a populist nationalist. America makes its own decisions for America. And as a populist, the American people are the people that make those decisions. Now, Benji Shapiro sat up here last night, and he was all, it's all about the truth. Ben, I've known you a long time, brother. You can't handle the truth. Let's face it, Ben Shapiro is the farthest thing from MAGA. Let's be blunt. He is a hardcore never-Trumper. He's a hardcore never-Trumper. In the spring of 16, he tried to upend Breitbart. He walked off the job, made a big deal about some incident in Mar-a-Lago with Corey Lewandowski. He tried to turn it to Ted Cruz from Donald Trump because he hated Donald Trump. In the general election, he barely supported Donald Trump. The first sign of when President Trump gets sent back to Mar-a-Lago, the very first individual that jumped on the Ron DeSantis train, the Israel First train, was Ben Shapiro. And those are the darkest days we had. In 21 and 22, you guys were there. He's consistently been against Trump, and now that President Trump doesn't back the Greater Israel Project. What is Greater Israel? It's not about Israel itself. It's about an expansionist Israel, an imperial Israel that Netanyahu and that crowd have thought up. And the Israel First crowd is Ben Shapiro, Tel Aviv Mark Levin, and many others that want to put that ahead of America's interests. Charlie Kirk fought that. You know where Charlie Kirk fought it? In the White House. I know, because I was there. When I went back, Charlie Kirk was working with Sergio Gore, certain people around the vice president, to make sure that we didn't get sucked into a land war, a decapitation of the Iranian elites that would lead to a massive civil war that American troops would get sucked into, because that was Netanyahu's plan from the beginning. And we know that. The Times of Israel has published that there was no urgency to go after the nuclear weapons. We know the fact they couldn't finish what they started. We know for a fact that they needed American Aegis, THAAD missiles, Patriots to defend themselves. On day 10 of the war, they were losing, and they didn't have the offensive capability. And I don't mean the B-2s coming in and taking out the caves. They relied upon our 1970s technology of cruise missiles fired from submarines in the North Arabian Sea to take out the above ground. We had to bring that war to conclusion, and President Trump in his brilliance said, we'll do that, and we'll call it the 12-day war, and it's over. Now, for the Israel First crowd, they are the ones that are destroying Israel. Today in Miami, who's negotiating with Witkoff? It's the Turks, it's Qatar, and it's the Egyptians. Because Qatar is going to underwrite Gaza, and 2 million Palestinians are going to stay there. And the Turks are providing, on Egyptian soil called Gaza, or on Israel soil called Gaza, is going to provide the military control mechanism over UAE troops, Saudi troops, and Egyptian troops. That's a two-state solution that has been provided because of the efforts of the Israel First crowd. And Charlie Kirk had one simple thing that he thought about. Who controls America and who makes decisions for the United States of America? And Charlie Kirk worked overtime because behind the scenes he was a player, not just helping Sergio get all types of great people in there and vet those people, but actually talking about policy. And part of that policy was no more foreign wars. Charlie absolutely believed what I believe. The Middle East is a sideshow, and Israel's a sideshow to a sideshow. Now, voices out there that support Israel, like Laura Loomer and Rabbi Walecki and others, are coming forward and say, look, maybe Bannon and these guys are right. We don't want to take any more American money. We don't have any more American control. We want to go out and do what we want to do when we, the Israelis, feel they have to do it. I support that 100%. Israel needs its sovereignty. Israel needs to be independent. If Israel wants to take on Syria, go for it. If Israel wants to go into Lebanon, go for it. But not drag the United States of America into another endless war. But Ben Shapiro is like a cancer, and that cancer spreads. It's a cancer, and it metastasizes. He tried to take over Breitbart, and I ran him out of there. He tried to take over David Horowitz's, who was his mentor. Don't ask me. Ask the guys associated with David Horowitz what he did there. He tried to take that over. And mark my word, he will make a move on Turning Point because he's always been envious of Charlie Kirk. They hate Charlie Kirk because Charlie Kirk brought victories. And with victory after victory after victory, that's when we can re-Christianize this country. What was Charlie Kirk's lesson? That we were a Christian nation that got off the rails. We have to re-Christianize this country. And what Charlie said, I said to Charlie, next man up. Charlie said, I got it. Next man up. Are you next man up? Are you going to fill the shoes of Charlie Kirk? Do you have the stones to do it? Do you have the guts to do it? Ask yourself that, because I tell you what, that's what's going. You in this room right here are going to decide whether we win in 26. And if we don't win in 26, they're going to bring holy hell down on us. We have to win. Charlie Kirk knew that, and you know that. Thank you very much. Next man up.